Ok. Tú estás listo a enseñar a la gente español. O inglés, cualquiera tú quieres. Ok. E je ne pas parler français. Você, vou pas? Ah, bom. E esse é como, esse é México. Em México, quando tu estás com a gente, uma pessoa aqui fala francês. Outra pessoa aqui fala espanhol e também inglês. Assim, este é México. México é rico e complexo. Mais bonito. Quem sabe que este país está bonito como esse? Eu e você, nós vamos a Guyana. O departamento de francês que está muito lejos de aqui, Guyana, tu sabe onde está Guyana? Ok, não, ela habla inglês, se tu pode dizer a ela sim, pero se há mexicanos, não. Deixa eu explain it.
Yeah. You understand?
I'm making this video specifically for the guys in the Philippines, the Filipino passport bros, Filipino expats. You see this battle between Big Jim Stud and Slick Rick, or is that what's his name? Slick Grandpa. Oh, not Slick Grandpa, Sick Grandpa, the sick one. And so you see these videos, and all Sick Grandpa videos are just parodies. They're just parodies. He isn't trying to be factual. He isn't necessarily trying to have a vigorous, legitimate attack on Jim, Mark Thornton, anyone, on Calvin, Sunshine Shoulders, anyone. It's pure comedy. It's a roast. He's basically Don Rickles, or Rodney Dangerfield. And the best thing that you can do is to be roasted by the sick one. And then if you are roasted by the sick one, the next best thing you could do is to laugh harder than the audience. He's not even trying to be accurate. Any guy that has a fistful of white pills, when you know that Viagra is blue, and maybe he has some generic Viagra from India that has a different color, but you know that Viagra is blue. And so here's Jim. And so here's the sick one. He has money spread out on the bed, and he has this supposed Viagra, and he's attempting to gulp it down. Now, that has to be comedy, because that much Viagra is going to kill anybody. We all know that. His heart is going to explode. We know that. So the guy is trying to be funny. And I'm not against the guy. I am trying to die above, and then someone who is below pushes me off or wiggles out from underneath me, and then bolts out of the room with the credit card, the watch, whatever that they can scrape together, and don't even bother to call the American, don't even bother to call don't even bother to call the paramedics. Just slips out of there into the night. That's my goal. And obviously that's sick grandpa's goal. And you can tell, because right now he's over there on Walking Street, living like the sick one. Okay. When you, and I'm going to attach a video to this, and that video is going to be in Portuguese, Spanish, and French. But the point of that video is going to be this. I'm cruising along on the bike, and I see the guy that's in the video. I see him. And so I say to him, hey, como está? Você está bien? And so he doesn't respond. So it sounds like he speaks Ubo. You know, his English sounds like Ubo. But I can't understand his English and he can't understand me. And so I switched from Portuguese to Spanish. Maybe he has Spanish, but he has no Spanish. So he says, Je seulement parle. Je seulement parle français. And so I said to him, Je ne pas parler français. And so then I speak to him in Portuguese. But most French speakers can understand Portuguese, and most Portuguese speakers can understand French. So it's not like Spanish and Portuguese, where most people who speak Spanish can't understand you, but you can understand them. But French and Portuguese are mutually intelligible. But I couldn't get his French. I couldn't get it. So we had to revert to English. And at some point, he sticks his phone in my hand, and he sticks his phone out like this. And he says, Je pouvais traduire. You know, can I translate? So he's sticking his phone out like this. Now, we're in the middle of a busy street. Someone come along and snatch the phone, and I mean that's the end of the phone. So we're both vulnerable. And then when he did this, the phone did not translate, and I didn't expect it would. You see these people, and they're trying to rely on like Google Translate. Google Translate does not work. One time I saw it work. I was in the Best Buy, and there were some Chinese people that were in a line. Chinese pilot and some beautiful Chinese girls, and they spoke good English. So I asked them, I said, hey, I want to test out Google Translate and see if it works. And so I said, can you guys speak Chinese? And so they spoke Chinese, and Google Translate worked really well. But here's what you got to understand. Number one, I was in a safe place. Number two, there was a reduced amount of noise. Maybe there were voices, but there was no traffic noise and other background noise. So it had a fair chance of working, but that's the only time that I've seen it work. The only time, and I'm talking about the only time since its inception that it's worked in that situation. So he's trying to translate. Doesn't work. And he doesn't know that what he should have done, and hold on, let me get him so you can see. He didn't know that what he should have done, and watch Smooth Lee. Smooth Lee has a pair of these. He should have put on a pair of these, and this was during the day. And then he should have not used Meta, even though you can use Meta AI. See, Ray-Ban. See if you can read it. He should have put on a pair of Ray-Bans. And the Ray-Bans would have, and as a matter of fact, when I show you this video with him, this video that I shot with him, it was shot with Ray-Bans. And what you're going to see is that with Ray-Bans and with what you would call ChatGPT, Sam Altman's new porn bot, what you're going to see is that if he had made sure that he had a data card that would work in Mexico, a SIM card, data card that would work in Mexico, and then he put his phone on standby with ChatGPT. He put his phone on standby with ChatGPT, and he asked ChatGPT to translate. ChatGPT would have translated right into, and let me put them on again. And you see these little, see right here, I'm going to put it up to the camera, maybe you can see it. But you're going to see some little microphones that are going to be on here. Let's see if I can even see them. It's dark in here. And I'm in Mexico, so I don't have much lighting. It is what it is. But you're going to have some little microphones on these glasses. So you put the microphones on, and then it's gonna say whatever, it's gonna translate both ways, and you don't have to use your phone. Even if it can't hear what you're saying, in my particular case, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what he says, because as long as he speaks slowly in French, I'm gonna understand what he's saying. And then the only thing that I have to do is just, I can say it right back into the glasses. Like, I can say, ok, você diz a mim que você vai a, você diz a mim que você vai a zona de tolerância, que é isso que tu quer? Okay, I can say that into the glasses on my own, and then the glasses will tell me exactly what it said in French, and then I can repeat it in French. Because French pronunciation, Portuguese pronunciation, they're exactly the same. There's a little bit of French that you don't have in Portuguese, but basically it's the same. So most people that speak French will understand you in Portuguese. Okay, so I'm already 11 minutes into this. So here's the point. The claim is that there's a claim out there that says that Don Banks is dramatizing Brazil. Austin Holloman is dramatizing Africa. Many people are dramatizing Colombia. Jim is now dramatizing Cambodia. Calvin is dramatizing Negros Oriente. Old Dog New Tricks is dramatizing Demaghetti. Okay. You don't have to even make those claims, and you can stop fearing, if you're a YouTuber, that you're going to run out of content. And here's why. When I rolled past that guy on the bike and I spoke to him, he was completely, absolutely lost. And what we're talking about is a competent bilingual. We're not talking about an English monolingual. We're talking about a competent bilingual who, if he tried, he could communicate with me in French. He could have spoke to me in French, and we would have communicated just fine. But he just didn't have the linguistic breadth to understand that. So he was locked in his mind into either French or English. So he came into Mexico, and he had no Spanish, and he had no exposure to Spanish, because he could not even understand dame agua. He could not even understand cuidado. He couldn't even understand aguas. He had nothing. And his English, not that there's such a thing as an accented English, but his English was accented. Okay, so and he was looking at social media and at a search engine to determine where he was going to go in Mexico. He was totally dependent upon YouTube and a search engine. So wrestling and saying sick grandpa has me by the neck and try to determine which is better. Is Thailand better than Cambodia? Is Cambodia better than Thailand? Should I go to Bangladesh? Well, what about Germany? What about Czechoslovakia? Damn, I'm going to Argentina. All of that stuff is just ornate salesmanship. When you look at it, and now I'm finally where I can look at U.S. commercials. Like maybe for 20 years I never watched TV. But now, because I'm not in the United States, I can look at commercials and I look at them in an entirely different perspective and see what these commercials are doing to you. And in the United States, everything is the Everest effect. Everything in the United States is the triple dog dare. Stick your tongue in midwinter, 30 below zero, in Duluth, Minnesota, on this telephone pole. Everything is the triple dog dare. It's all the Everest effect. Everything, every commercial, every movie, every piece of writing, it's so ubiquitous that it's even crept into academic writing in the United States. I watch microbe TV all the time. And they've gotten to the point that they increased their viewership, that they've been talking ever since it was proposed that RFK Jr., ever since it's been proposed that RFK Jr. should be the secretary of whatever the hell he's the secretary of, they have been pounding away at that guy, and justifiably so. The guy is a world-class data distorter. He distorts data like no one that I've ever seen. I mean, he's a complete absolute artist. And in 1977, when the United States Supreme Court said that lawyers could advertise, and I think that's the Arizona case, lawyers have been doing exactly that. You know, everybody now is an ambulance chaser, and you are going to create illness. You are going to create crime. You are going to create a crime. You are going to not create a crime. They can't do that. But they are going to create a class of plaintiffs, a class that needs legal advice. They are going to go out and seek out women and men who are unhappy in their relationships to give them a divorce, which they're going to get paid for, which really doesn't make any sense because 50-50 is 50-50. So as long as the assets are absolutely clean, it's like, I mean, bear with me. You go to one of those guys to get a divorce, and you look at this video, since you guys are the passport bros think that all women are the problem. That's not really the case. It's not the women. What they're not telling you is that you need a forensic accountant. Now think about how many times anybody out here gets divorced. And if you're a rich guy, skip all of that prenup stuff that you hear all these people talk about. Because it's always going to go right around 50-50. Even if you got a prenup, there are ways to glide around that prenup. Many, many, many ways. Many ways. There's many ways to void a prenup. But you cannot void the 50-50 communal property. So that's just absolutely essential. But what if someone is sheltering assets? Or what if someone is selling assets? Or what if, like the Moroccan football player, you put all of your assets in your mother's name? So you need a forensic accountant. But your lawyer isn't going to tell you that. He's going to tell you that you need him. Okay, now, so let's get back to this guy that's going to be later on in this video that's going to be on that bench. That guy needed directions to where he wanted to go. And so I gave him directions. I said, over there, 2 and something miles is where you want to go. I couldn't take him on my bike. He couldn't get a an Uber, because he couldn't communicate. And then he was afraid of me. And then he was afraid of everyone around him. And then he said, well, I got to keep moving, because if I don't keep moving, something bad can happen to me. And he didn't realize is that if something bad was going to happen to him, he needed to save his energy. He needed to save his energy. Because, whatever bad was going to happen to him, it was going to happen to him in waves, not in onesies and twosies. It was going to be in waves, so he needed to save his energy. But he didn't understand this. And he was in no apparent danger, but he was just so fearful. He basically, I hate to say it, but he had shaky English. His French may have been excellent, but he didn't have enough French to understand Portuguese. And I'm going to say this again. Most people that speak French understand Portuguese. And most people that speak Portuguese understand French. So my best guess is that this guy was from an African country. That's my best guess. And he was totally relying on YouTube and social media. So what I told him is, as I said, look, if you want to go where you're going, and I'm going there anyway, I said, you don't know the lay of the land. It's best that you go there with me. Because whatever you're reading on the internet, that's not the way it is anymore. And you don't know anyone over there anymore. And you don't know anybody over there. And so he asked me, he said, well, if I go over there, is somebody going to try and hurt me? And I asked him, I said, why do you have that in your mind? Why do you have that in your mind? Why do you have that in your mind? And he had no answer as to why he had that in his mind. But I mean, he was reeking of fear. And one of the things that you cannot do is you have to accept your fate. You have to accept your fate in life. If it's your time, it's your time. But one thing you can't do is get unrelaxed and get fearful. Relax. Relax. Once the bullet penetrates the skin, you don't feel anything. Once the knife penetrates the skin, you don't feel anything. All of the nerve endings are in the skin. I fall all the time on a bike. Bam! The fall does not hurt. The next day, superficially, it hurts like hell. But the fall doesn't hurt. So it's like somebody punches you in the face. The punch doesn't hurt, but the next day it hurts like hell. Getting shot, that isn't going to hurt you. But if you survive it, it's going to hurt like hell. But you can exacerbate your pain if you coil up in fear. And this guy was coiled up in fear. He couldn't operate. He couldn't think. He couldn't understand because he was coiled up in fear. So what I'm saying to you is that nobody that is giving out advice, that is saying go to the Philippines, go to Russia, go to China, go to Boston, go to LA, go to bumfuck Egypt, nobody is going to run out of viewership. That you can guarantee. Yeah, you got to throw in some drama. Yeah, you got to sit grandpa. Yeah, you got to throw in some drama to keep the algorithm happy and to keep the views going. But basically, what people need and what they want and what they cannot get any other place is basic information. Is basic information. You can look. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. I want to go to Tabachinga. And that means that the cheapest way to go to Tabachinga, Amazona, is to go through Leticia. Is to go through Leticia, Colombia. It's 2.7 kilometers from the airport in Leticia to the central of Tabachinga. Now, if I take a bike with me, that's 11 minutes of unobstructed traffic to where I gotta go. And I can cross, and I don't have to worry about any immigration. Just cross straight in there. Because immigration is gonna be on the interior. It's gonna be on the interior and on the eastern side of Tabachinga. So Tabachinga, Leticia, open city. Navigate it. Okay. I have no problem going to Tabachinga. None. But I wouldn't be using Google Maps. And if I did use Google Maps, this is how I use Google Maps. And I had to use Google Maps the other day to go to the supermarket. You put these on. You click on Google Maps. Now, in the old days, you couldn't do this because you'd have to use some earphones and they would block your ear canal, so you couldn't understand. You could understand what it was saying, but you couldn't hear anything around you, and that just didn't work. That's how it worked before these glasses. Now with these babies, you can hear everything around you. Now I have another set of devices where you can hear things around you, but you don't have access to information. You would just only have Google Maps saying go here, go there, go here, go there. But in the old days, I'd have to have Google like this, and I'd have to have it in my hand. And the way I did it is that I just have it in French. So it didn't matter if everyone could hear it in the United States or in Mexico or in Brazil. Didn't matter. But if I was in Guyana, okay, now people know where I'm going, and you got problems. If I'm in Montunique, then I gotta switch it to another language. I'm in Montreal, I gotta switch it to another language. But now you can have it in any language you want as long as you use some metas. You can have it in any language that you want, and unless somebody is extremely close to you, they can't hear it. Okay, so the point of this is that you are not going to run out of giving people basic information. You do need drama to drive clicks and views. Someone that is in your comment section who you think is a troll is the best thing that can possibly happen to you, because controversy drives clicks and views. If you are a polarizing person, you can become president of the United States or the prime minister of Italy. You just ask Silvio Berlusconi. You can even become the chancellor of Germany. Just ask Adolf Hitler. You can even be from Brighton, Michigan, and be the #1 guy that's going to win the presidency over Ulysses S. Grant, as long as you don't get your ass killed at the little bighorn. Nothing drives a person to success better than fame. Fame, contention, drama, struggle. It's always been like that. So you get on here and maybe you don't like what somebody said about you. You don't like what sick grandpa said, but sick grandpa is a blessing. You don't like that Jim had his shirt off, but that's polarization. And one of the classic cases of this, and I'll end this video with saying this and then attach the other video. Alcibiades was taught by Socrates. And I forgot the name of Alcibiades' father, but he was the guy that basically made Greece Greece. But Alcibiades was such a polarizing figure that the word demagogue is named after Alcibiades. He's the guy that made the phrase possible. So when you're on YouTube and you're being hated by trolls, and you got to respond to what you call trolls, and you feel that you're misunderstood, and this and that, the other, that's not hurting you, that's helping you. If somebody jumps on here and says, hey, you know what? You got the grammar all messed up. Whatever you said, let's say that I say it like I said to the guy. I said, je suis brasileiro. Let's say that I got that French just totally messed up. And somebody drops into the comment on this video, hey, you idiot, that's not the way you say it in French. That doesn't hurt me. That helps me. It helps me in two ways. Number one, if I am wrong, then I can be corrected for the next video. And that's important. Number two, if I'm right, that just reaffirms me. Doesn't hurt me. Doesn't hurt me. So, the guy at the tail end of this video, he's gonna prove it to you. The girl that is sitting there talking to us at the tail end of this video, she's gonna prove it to you. I said to her, now I'm gonna give you a perfect example of her situation. She is outside on Main Street in El Centro and she is sleeping on a mattress. She has great Spanish. I never knew she spoke Spanish. I only spoke to her in English. Then I found out that she actually speaks Spanish. So now I speak to her in Spanish. And you can tell from the video that she's disturbed and can't figure out what I'm saying in Portuguese, really. So she's disturbed by that. And she definitely, her whole brain would have started on fire if the guy had been speaking in French. And he did, and she was like, what? Okay. But here's the thing. I asked her, I said, hey, would you like to teach Spanish on YouTube? And she said, no, I can't teach Spanish on YouTube. She has the ability. Now, she has no sense of grammar. Like, you're not going to ask her to conjugate anything. You know, you're not going to ask her to go into the substantive. You know, what is the substantive mood? You're not going to get her to do that, even though she probably can speak in that mood. She isn't going to necessarily recognize the past tense from the indicative present tense. But she's a competent Spanish speaker. She's competent. I've listened to her in conversation. She's competent. But what she said is that I don't have a telephone. So obviously she sold her telephone, and I'm going to be blunt, she sold her telephone for a rock. She's out on the mattress because her mother-in-law, who's Mexicana, kicked her out. The mother-in-law kept the kids and kicked her out because she has a hard time doing any business on the street because nobody really trusts her. And I'm not going to say that she's not attractive because I'm not attractive. If I were attractive, then I would be able to say that she's not very attractive. But mind you, I'm not attractive, so I will not say that she's not attractive. So just pardon me. You take a look at her and you decide for yourself. But what I'm saying is that her primary failing in life now is that she doesn't have information. She thinks she needs money, but what she doesn't have is information. Now, at any time, bad weather could strike. At any time. And she can't pick up her telephone and see the forecast. Something can be happening 5 blocks away from her. And she can't pick up her telephone and scroll through Facebook and say, damn, 5 blocks away, toil, boil, and trouble, something wicked this way cometh. She can't do that. So you're providing a vital service. So if you get all upset and all bent out of shape because some troll said something bad about you, think of it as a blessing. You get all bent out of shape because sick grandpa used you, because sick grandpa roasted you. Clint Eastwood doesn't get mad because Don Rickles roasts him. He's laughing. Eddie Murphy didn't get mad because he got roasted. He was laughing. Who's that? The GOAT? Michael Jordan didn't get mad because somebody pulled him on stage and he got roasted. Pele didn't get mad when he got roasted. Ronaldo didn't get mad when he got roasted. Hell, at the president's dinner, when the president gets roasted by the press, the president doesn't get mad. You can have entertainment and information. But when it comes right down to it, just like you're going to say in this video, it has to come down to information. This guy that only spoke Spanish and French, he needed information and he needed it badly. And whatever sources that he got, whatever he thought he knew from, his sources failed him. And this woman who is completely cut off from the internet, from AI, from telephone communications, she's way back on that mattress in the Stone Age. Sometimes here it can get really cold this time of year. I've seen it where it can be 80 degrees and then the next day it's 32. If the temperature falls, she damn well could freeze to death. And she won't have enough information to know to get inside. And I've seen that occur in this part of North America. And it's all the way down to Chiapas. So the weather is absolutely unpredictable in this part of North America, in the whole of North America. It can snow any place in North America. We're not on the equator. Think of it. Think of it. Davao City in the Philippines is 5 degrees north of the equator. But even in Baguio City, sometimes in Baguio City, it can get down to 32 degrees. And people can freeze to death in Baguio City. It snows in Taiwan. So people need information. You can toss in, you can toss in riots, sports, and games with information. You can even make videos with no information. But the reason people are coming to you is for information. Yeah, they love entertainment. So don't just think, man, I gotta win. I gotta win every debate. I gotta win every fight. I gotta win on every video. I ain't gotta win a goddamn thing. Sometimes I'm gonna win. But most often in my case, I'm gonna lose. And losing is good. If you lose, you get knocked down and you get your ass back up. That's what life is really all about. I was getting picked on as a boy because I couldn't use these things. And and I was taking some beatings out there. And so I went to my father. I said, Pai, ajuda-me, pai. Eu não tenho nada, pai. Ensine-me capoeira. I told him, hey, pai, show me how to fight. And he said, look, he said, let me tell you something. He said, sticks and stones break my bones, but words, they cannot hurt me. He said, now, if I teach you, he said, se eu ensino você capoeira, como você vai usar? If I teach you capoeira, how are you going to use it? And what he was trying to get across to me is, and Mai told me this, she said the next time you get out there, she said what you really need to do is not throw these up. She said you can be a kabaji. She said you can be a kabaji. She said, but most importantly, she said, if you're going to fight, you commit yourself to fight for your country. You commit yourself to fight for your family. And you commit yourself to fight for your self-defense. And she said, just because someone says something bad about you, and just because someone throws a punch at you, she said, that doesn't mean that you've got to respond back. She said, the first thing you always do is run. You run to a safe place, you get your back up against the wall, and you get prepared. She said, because just because one guy comes at you, that doesn't mean that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ain't coming. And you see that all the time. Two guys are out there and they throw their things up, punches go, and then one of the dudes starts losing. And then his boy comes in, kunk, and takes that other dude's whole head off because he squared up without looking at the situation. Well, what he should have been doing was, hold on, wait, I gotta run, get my back up against the wall, I gotta see what's coming. And that's the rule of life. You gotta always figure that you're gonna lose first. So when you get on these videos and you're all sensitive, said, Grandpa said this about me. Or you've been like this guy at the tail end of this video. You sat, and he's from New York City. You sat in New York City and you read all of this stuff online about Mexico, and then you get down here and you find out that you can't even function because you're gripped by fear. You're gripped by fear. That means, in spite of the fact that he spoke French and English, his mind was paralyzed. He was not prepared, and he did not have enough information. And you can say that I'm cruel, but you could look at his body and you could tell that he was soft. He could outrun me. I'm an old guy. My partner, un cubano, he coaches boxing, and he was showing these young guys that were prepared for a fight a particular technique, and he's 80 years old, but he's dark skinned, so he doesn't look 80. He has one eye that's maybe up like this, and he's bald, but other than this one eye that's up like this and he's bald, he just looks 50, 60 years old. So he's showing his boxers this move. And so the boxers are looking at him. and they're doing it worse than he's doing it. And so he says, espera. He says, espera, que ustedes está pensando? Que ustedes está pensando? Ustedes no está haciendo esto correctamente. Yo soy 80 años, y ustedes van a permitirme a hacer esto mejor que ustedes? He says it like that. So what I'm saying is yeah, this guy that was from New York City with the Spanish and the English, certainly he could have outran me. I'm old, but I'm not what was coming for him. So he couldn't outran what he feared. So why did he fear? And then the second thing is that he had none of this. He had none of this. He had none of this, and you can tell guys who got some of this. When they got this, you know they got it. Because when you come up to them, they're already in that stance. They know exactly how to get into that position. They know how to keep that distance. They know that shoulder lean. They know what they're doing. He had none of that. None of that. Okay, so this is a long video, but it's absolutely necessary. So calm down. Infuse some drama in there, Calvin. That's okay. Y'all get off the sick one. The sick one truly is providing absolutely no. The sick one is providing, and I'm going to say this again, the sick one is providing no information. The sick one is just roasting. That's all he does. He's just roasting. You're not called the sick grandpa because you told somebody how to take a taxi, or you told somebody how to get on the jeepney, or you gave somebody some legitimate advice. You're on there screwing other content creators straight into the ground. You're knocking them to the mat. You toasted them. That's what sick grandpa does. Accept it. Relax. Move on. You're not going to lose viewership. Just provide information. There's going to be a new fool, a new blockhead that's going to want to go to Colombia, that's going to want to go to Brazil, that's going to want to traipse to Mexico, that's going to want to go to Iowa. I'll give you one more little anecdote because this thing is long. I knew this dude named Bernard. And Bernard, now people say that I can't speak Midwest Standard, and I understand that. But Bernard was not even close to Midwest Standard. And in these days, people that lived in the southern tier of the United States, they were practically unintelligible to people that were north of the Mason-Dixon. So Bernard excuse me. So Bernard gets this idea in his mind, someplace down in Alabama, that he's gonna go to Minnesota. And the express reason why he was going to Minnesota is because he heard about the women in Minnesota. See, the world is no different. It is no different in the days of the old dudes as it is in the days of these young dudes. People just went to different places. Now people go far longer than they used to go. But Bernard felt that in Alabama or wherever he was from, he felt, and he felt with good reason, he felt that he was not making any money and that the women were dogging him, and he had to move on to greener pastures. And you know, he heard songs like "Do Me, Baby." You know, he got caught up in Prince and the Revolution. He was like, man, I got to go up there because whatever's going on up there at First Avenue or whatever the case may be, they got it going on up there. And he was right. Bernard slipped up there. Bernard gets up there, and Bernard was about 6'2". He was well muscled. He was well proportioned. He had a perfect sandy complexion. I mean, you know, he may even, you know, been a green-eyed devil. I mean, but Bernard, in every sense of the word, he was a winner. But he could not speak any Midwest standard. None. So he sounded like he was walking behind a mule every time you talked to him. And he might have been from Mississippi. And then in those days, Mississippi had zero. They had zero. They were number 50 of all. Today they're like in the top 10 states, maybe in the top 5. But they were number 50 in terms of education. So even if Bernard graduated from high school, he was like an 8th grade Minnesotan. And Bernard was an intelligent guy, but he could not talk to anybody. He could not express himself. And when somebody talked to him, A went in and A didn't come out. Maybe A came in I don't know, something in Swahili or something came out. But he was constantly walking around dizzy and dense. I mean, he just couldn't get it. He just couldn't get it. That's what this guy was like in this video that I'm going to show you from Mexico. He was just completely, absolutely lost and unprepared. Bernard could adjust. He could fix himself. He could, because he was only dealing with one language. So he could fix that. I'm going to give you one more story and then I'm going to get out of here. He had a partner. Same deal. He decides that he's going to get him a Latina girlfriend. And I tell him, I say, hey man, look, let me break this down to you. He was Italian, by the way. And he had a baby's mama, and her name was Blondie. But she was from South Carolina. And I was wondering, why in the hell is he calling this black lady Blondie? But Blondie came up from South Carolina, and I saw why he called her Blondie. Because Blondie looked like Blondie. Blondie was just gorgeous. But he couldn't get along with Blondie, so he decided that he was going to get a Latina. So he goes off and and he's at the time they had a very small Latin American community in St. Paul, Minnesota. So he goes traipsing over there. And since he was Italian, he looked like a Mexican, you know. So he goes over there, and I mean, and he's you know, whining, dining, romancing, or whatever he's trying to do. And then he came to me, and he had this Spanish phrase book. He had a Spanish phrase book. I'm like, hold on, man. You got a Spanish phrase book. Because there was no internet, so you couldn't get him good information. So he actually thought that he was going to run over there to St. Paul on the banks of the Missouri River with a Spanish phrase book, and he was going to hang. No, no. And he was only like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, 8 or 9, 10 miles from home. And he was lost. So you look at some guy that came all the way from New York City and goes to Mexico, and even though he has French and English, he can't even speak phrase book Spanish. And he thinks he's going to survive. My partner spent absolutely zero time asking me anything about Spanish or Portuguese. Nothing. He was Italian, and he the only thing that he knew about Italian was stromboni. And that's when he had his hands between his legs and he constantly thought, stromboni! That was the extent of it. So the world is not going to run out of guys like that who are going to be running around the world with a little bit of information and phrase books. You're not going to run out of them type of people. You're not going to run out of people like Bernard. You're not going to run out of them. No one is going to sit there in a library, in the stacks, going like this, parsing every little verb and getting it right. So I can sit here and tell somebody that, hey, you want to survive in the Philippines, all you got to say is "Ako puede." And that's the first person pronoun with a modal verb. And that is going to negate the affixes on the third word. I can say that to you all day long, and you're just going to ignore that. So I can say, "Eko puede basa." I can read. You're going to ignore that because somebody's going to tell you, that's not Tagalog. You've got to be more fancy. And you're going to try and introduce aspect. I can't stop you. The only thing that I can do is that if you and I are both in Manila, I can damn well show you. See? That's the thing. I can show you. And that's the thing about YouTube. So you got people on here and they don't ever show you. I can do this. I've been here. I've been there. I've been there. You know, they're sitting up there. They're talking to that same damn sales girl. And it doesn't matter what she's selling. If she's selling bread, if she's selling cookies, if she's selling kitty cat. She's a sales girl. She's a sales girl. I'm going to say that again. She's a sales girl. So you're looking at these videos and these guys are doing nothing but shooting sales girls. They don't have any legitimate relationship with these people. How are you going to have a legitimate relationship with someone that you can't talk to? Think about that. Ponder that a second. How are you going to have a legitimate relationship with somebody that you can't talk to? And I've seen this entirely from the other side. I've had partners who are Mexican and they're in the United States. And they come to me, hey, Dicano, yo quiero por esta mujer. Tú puedes introducirme a esta mujer. Yo pienso que ella está muy bonita. I go over there. I say, hey, you know, my partner Julio, he really likes you. I want to introduce you to him. I know that you really don't have a man, but look, Julio is a really good guy. He's really solid. He's really substantial. And you know what happens? That girl says no. She says no. This video is long, but this is a teaching moment, and I don't give a damn how long it is. Had a partner, my favorite man in the world, Pedrinho. Pedrinho's wife took off to Tabachinga. No, not to Tabachinga. What is that? So much noche, Santa Catarina. Cabachi. I forgot the name, but it's with a C. She took off to that city, and she had to get the hell out of the United States because she worked for the FDA of Brazil, and so to get her pension, she had to continue to work for the FDA of Brazil. So she, you know, did faxinas in the United States for 4, 5, 6 years, and then she went back to her job in Brazil. But Pedrinho, he didn't want to go back to Brazil. So now Pedrinho, and you know, I'd be rolling with Pedrinho. Pedrinho and I are rolling down the street, and Pedrinho had blue-green eyes, and he looked just like an Italian, and he was really, really light complected. So, you know, it never failed. And Pedrinho lived in this neighborhood that was shaky. It was shaky. I hated to go over there. I mean, it was shaky. So Pedrinho lived in this shaky ass neighborhood. And every time I go over there, they're right behind us. Because what was their assumption? You see this jet black dude like me and this white guy like Pedrinho who looks like he's from England or something. What are you going to assume? You're going to naturally assume that I'm the server. So I mean, monthly, they were behind us and stopping us. And it was always the same old question. So I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. And I'm listening to the police officer. He can't speak a damn bit of Portuguese. And I'm listening to Pedrinho, and Pedrinho can't speak a damn bit of English. And I'm listening to these two. And I know that Pedrinho, he doesn't even have a driver's license. I'm not sure if he has insurance, but he doesn't have a driver's license. I know this. Hell, I knew because Pedrinho was whopping it out there. He was without papers. So I'm sitting up here, I'm listening to the police officer, and it was police officers of all types. Females, all racial categories. And they were letting Pedrinho slide. And they would always look over at me, and I'm just sitting there. I'm listening to the guy, I'm listening to Pedrinho. And occasionally, I would have to say something to Pedrinho. I would never translate. I just let him talk. And occasionally, every once in a while, I'd have to say something to Pedrinho like, hey, Pedrinho, você temos luz. Fecha a luz, Pedrinho. Fecha a luz. Okay, so maybe I might have to say that. So now the guy is looking over at me. The police officer, he's looking over at me. And what he realizes is he's got two guys in the car that look entirely different but share the same culture. and share the same language. And he realized, and they realized that they just let Pedrinho, because of the way he looked and because of their perception, they just realized that they let him drive all over the world. No driver's license, questionable insurance, questionable plates, one headlight out. They let him drive to Timbuktu like that. Whereas if I had been driving the car, they would have been perp walking me. it, it was pure comedy. I didn't hate Pedrinho for this, and I didn't hate them for that, because life ain't fair. I had no hatred. Life ain't fair. So, get on here. Stop looking for fairness. Stop looking under the damn bridge for trolls, Calvin. Stop hating on a pure entertainer like Sick Grandpa. Everybody relax. Pedrinho needs information. And this is a story I was going to tell you about Pedrinho. Pedrinho, before I got under cops, Pedrinho goes off and he needs a woman, right? So, but here's the thing about Pedrinho. Pedrinho looked like, Pedrinho was handsome. He looked like, who did he looked like my partner that was Italian in Minnesota. He looked like him. I mean, he was slim, he was muscular, you know, blue-green eyes, and you know, just real handsome guy. So, but Pedrinho solamente él gusta somente pardos, él gusta somente mulheres con colores. He only liked dark-skinned women. That was it. You know, from honey brown all the way to my color. That was Pedrinho's thing. If you were light to Pedrinho, you just weren't right. So I'm like, Pedrinho, and all of the Brazilian women in town had basically like, Pedrinho, your wife is gone, and you should have went back with her, and you're still married. So all of the Brazilian women were pitching him a shutout, and and Pedrinho was saying stuff like, "Oh, este não é justo, porque talvez eu tenha neve arriba, mas eu tenho fogo abaixo." He was saying all of that sort of stuff, and he had the nerves to even shed a tear about it. Porque elas estão aí como este contra mim. He was even carrying on like that about it. So I said, okay, Pedrinho, look, man. He saw me with, a morena americana. And so he said, oh, eu vi que você está com estas morenas americanas. Você sabe que eu gosto de morenas americanas. Ajuda-me, cara. So I said, okay, Pedrinho, I'm going to help you out, dog. I'm going to help you out. You're handsome. You're making money, and I said, hey, you can present these women with some good game. And I said, Pedrinho, I said, it's just like Chica da Silva. Okay. Chica da Silva was a black slave, but her master was Portuguese. So this is like the Thomas Jefferson story. And so I know somebody is going to hate what I'm about to say, and I'm sorry. But in Brazil, what you want to do is, if you're as black as this, you want to get like this. That's just the way it is. And I have no control over that. And I don't hate anybody that thinks like that. And I'm not a race warrior. So I'm not, you know. So I don't tell people how they should do things. So I tell Pedrinho, I said, look, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna help you because I know the psychology of these people. And I said, I'm telling you, the psychology of black American women is the same psychology of dark skinned Brazilian women. He looked at me like, huh? Now he knew that the reason his wife in Brazil chose him in Bahia is because he looked European. And she wanted to have European looking children. So he knew that. So I take Pedrinho over to this church that's full of black women. There were no dudes in there. There was me, Pedrinho, and maybe one other guy. That was it. All women. So I go in there and I tell him, I say, look, I know my boy is a little old, but he's got money. And I said, and look at it this way. I said, look at how he looks. Look at them eyes. I mean, look at that body. I said, hey, look, with this guy, you're gonna have a beautiful baby. I said, I know maybe you got kids now, but with this guy, you're gonna have a beautiful baby. And I said, every woman deserves a chance to have a beautiful baby. I'm not saying that the babies you got now aren't beautiful or the baby that you're thinking of isn't beautiful, but I said with him, you're definitely gonna have a beautiful baby. I know that sounds bad to some of y'all. I'm sorry. But we're an hour and 10 minutes into this video, so most of y'all won't get to this racial blasphemy anyway. Well, them women said this to me. They said, he's handsome, he's great, but what are you gonna do? Are you gonna come into the bedroom with us? Because I can't understand him and he can't understand me. And I'm telling you, all of my Mexican partners, I'm gonna tell you a story that's I'm not in the jurisdiction, so I'm gonna just tell this story. I'm sitting at the house, and all of a sudden I hear psh, tsh, 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 tsh. I look outside, and there's two fine young ladies out there. Fine. So I opened the door. I said, okay, how are you? And they smiled. And they said, you speak Spanish and English, don't you? I said, well, why do you ask? And they said, well, you know across the street, that house that's got all of those guys in it? All of those Mexican guys? I'm like, yeah. They said, can you come across over here and help us talk to them? I go over there and help them talk to them. And so one of the Mexican guys says, yo no voy a tener sexo con este mocas de las perras. I'm like, hey, okay. Guess we just gotta X you out. So the Mexican guys, they had their complaints. And then the African American ladies say, you just say one thing to them, that no matter what they do, make sure that they take some showers or some baths or something before they touch me. Okay. That was cool. Said that to them, said that everybody was happy. Everybody was happy. Nobody was sad. You know. But next door, there was a Latino guy, a Mexican guy, and he had just a beautiful Mexican wife. I don't know how he got her up there, But in those days, what we would all do is we would go to a real small town. So if your papers were all fucked up, you went to a real small town, like Albert Lee, Minnesota. you know, you went to a place like that. You didn't go like to Dallas because in downtown Dallas, Barack Obama rode the border patrol into downtown Dallas. I was running through the bus station from the dudes. I mean, they were all off in there. As soon as I got off the bus, I had to make a sprint. I'm like, oh no, I can't get caught up in this. Somebody is gonna be asking for IDs, credentials, whereabouts. I'm like, hey, it was like today with ICE. I mean, I had to get the hell out of there. So, the woman that was next door, and I don't know how the guy got his wife up there. She was just absolutely just beautiful. And I mean, the whole neighborhood was transfixed with her. She just was incredible. So now here's a house with about 13 guys in it and 3 bedrooms. And then they're next door to a really beautiful woman. And this guy has gotten his wife up there or his woman up there. And most of the time when you talk about immigration, you're only talking about the guy coming. The women don't come. So I talk to Mexican guys all the time that would be mad at me because their wife was way back in Mexico, and they couldn't speak English. So they couldn't run to the club and do anything. I mean, they couldn't talk. They go, like in Dallas, they go to a place called Far West. You rolled off in the Far West, and I had a partner that was in Far West, and he had he had a woman in Far West. And this is going to sound crazy to you guys that think that you can just traipse through a country without the language. It's going to sound crazy. And you think that Latinos are always winning. My boy, Francisco, he had this badass, curvaceous Mexicana. I mean, she was bad to the bone. But it's not parity. It's like you got 8 guys in there and 2 women. And one of the women is from Mexico, and the other one is a Chicana. And it's hard to relate to Chicanas. So basically, you got 8 dudes and 1 woman. So Francisco was a drummer in a band. So he had a little bit of cachet because he was in that band. So he could do a little bit of choosing. So this woman chose him. Well, guys were always after her because, like I said, 8 guys and 2 women. And one of the women is going to be a Chicana, even in Dallas, Texas, I'm telling you. So the drunk dude all of a sudden makes an advance towards Francisco's woman, and Francisco turns around, puts them things on the trunk. So that's how it is. Guy comes from Mexico, from El Salvador, from Brazil. He's in there. If he doesn't have any English, it's like 8 dudes, 2 women, and one of them was born in the United States. And he can't culturally relate to her. The only thing that she can possibly do for him is give him some papers. Which sounds to y'all like a lot. but you can't relate to her. You can't relate to her. So all you wind up with is just papers. And Francisco, his first wife was a Chicana. So he had two beautiful daughters, and they're marvelous. And he got himself some papers. Ex-wife, beautiful. But they couldn't get along. She never wanted to go to Mexico. She never wanted to deal with his family. She never felt safe and secure with him. To her, he was just a Mexican. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, damn, you know, they spoke the same language. Aren't they the same people? Well, no. No. Just because you speak English and there's some Scotsman, that doesn't mean that you want to go to Scotland. You may want to go to Scotland on vacation, but that doesn't mean that you want to stay there. People that are in India speak English. That doesn't mean that you want to marry some guy from India and go over there and swim the Ganges. So, this is a long video, but it was necessary, and nobody need watch this, but here's the thing. I'm going to say this again. This guy at the tail end of this video, he needed a YouTuber. Pedrinho, he needed a YouTuber. Those guys that were in that house that were across the street from me, they needed a YouTuber to teach them some English. My boy Alfrance Napolitano in Minnesota running around with that Spanish phrase book, he needed some comprehensible damn input. Not that I believe in comprehensible input, but because I don't know what it is, but whatever it is definitely better than an old-fashioned phrase book. So, cut out all of the bullshit. Stop knocking the trolls. Stop worrying about sick grandpa and get on with the game. If you don't have any comic appeal and you don't entertain, give out some information and squeeze in a little bit of entertainment with it. A little bit of entertainment goes a long way. Ciao. And you'll see the video that's attached to this.